Guess who got brands talking? Brandlife.co.za.
Welcome to Shapeshifters, brought to you by the SACPCMP. Recent media reports have highlighted that poor construction, non-adherence to proper building procedures, and illegally built structures were a major contributing factor to the damage that was seen to buildings and houses in the recent KZN floods. Today we discuss the significance of building inspectors to the industry. And we have with us SACPCMP's Project Manager for Building Inspectors, Doug Michell. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Natasha.
Doug, the evidence in the damage that we saw a few weeks ago, resulting from poor construction, surely this points to a need for the professionalization of building inspectors.
Natasha, I would agree with you, and that's been one of the motivating factors behind the project which we are engaging on for the registration of building inspectors. And if I can expand on that, the construction industry has been plagued for many years with poor building standards or construction standards. And in essence, all homes, all buildings should be erected in accordance with the National Building Regulations and the Building Standards Act. So with that in mind, in November 2015, the NHBRC and the SACPCMP took the bold steps to enter into a partnership and sign a memorandum of understanding which would formalize the process of professionalization of building inspectors. And so by engaging or beginning on this process, it would look to promote a professionalization or a professional approach and a consistent implementation of the building standards, which in essence should result in improved construction standards in relation to the National Building Regulations.
Now, will this registration process be for home building inspectors only?
Natasha, no, it would not be only for home builders. In the NHB, after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, the NHBRC commissioned a study to look at the current situation. But this study embraced all spheres of buildings. It didn't just look at home building, which is what the NHBRC looks at, but it looked to establish a framework for all building inspectors in the construction sector. And it progressed in that the CBE engaged with all the six built environment councils to determine which council would be mandated to do the registration. And it was agreed that the SACPCMP was the council that was best established to deal with the building inspectors. And why do I say that is in the SACPCMP Act, under Section 18.1, the SACPCMP is empowered to register any prescribed or specific category which it deems fit from time to time to register. And the building inspectors would fall under this 18.1 category.
Now, in terms of the study that you mentioned, give us a little bit more detail on that, the objectives, the methodology of the study.
It was a nationwide study, and it was really to determine the overall size, the composition, the demographical and educational levels of the building inspectors currently operating in the industry. So it looked at the numbers in the occupational levels, their functional areas of responsibility, and the actual numbers of vacancies existing in the industry, because of course that is important in service delivery. We look at the skills complement, the type of work per occupational category in the different spheres of government, and then the number of building inspectors that are actually employed in the public and in the private sector.
How many building inspectors do we have, Doug? Do you know that number?
I can't give you an exact number because the NHBRC has, the municipalities have, but we're expecting around about between 2,500 to 3,000 inspectors to register in the first round. So if I can just get back to the study itself, it didn't just it looked at giving us recommendations as well. Once it had the findings, it gave us some recommendations on the scope of services for the categories of registration, and of course it recommended categories too, what technical skills would be needed by the building inspectors, and then of course once registration is completed, the continuous professional development regime that should be implemented. It looked at current availability of technical courses, and it identified regulatory measures required for the professional professionalization. So in other words, what I'm saying here is that what regulations need to change. And if they do change, what regulatory steps do we need to put in place? If I can just then continue, the methodology which was used was both a qualitative and a quantitative method. They were combined. They looked at the literary reviews of previous research in this sphere. They had one-on-one interviews with stakeholders within the industry, and that wasn't just home building inspectors. It was employers, voluntary associations, municipalities, and government departments. And then there was a questionnaire developed to explore the thinking of the stakeholders within the industry, focusing obviously on the outcome of a regulatory framework which would control the regulations or the regulatory framework. The report which was produced, I must say, was a comprehensive report and is giving the task team a good foundation from which to work in the development of the identification of the different categories and the actual criteria for the registration in these categories.
In terms of the task team, who is this task team?
The task team is drawn from industry specialists. Every task team member is a built environment specialist or works within the built environment. We have representatives from the NHBRC, the SACPCMP, Agriman South Africa, the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, the National Department of Human Settlements, the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, the Central University of Technology, the University of Johannesburg, and the Tshwane University of Technology.
That's quite a list.
Yes, so I think we could quite safely say that we have covered all sectors. This is not an exhaustive list. As the task team moves on, other specialists might be identified and they would be invited, for example, Department of Labour, Department of Public Works, and the CBE. So if I could continue then, so once the task team was established, terms of reference was established, and the terms of reference include the registration categories, obviously, what categories would be required, and then the competencies related to those categories, the scope of services for each of those categories, and the registration criteria which is related to those categories. We would obviously then need to look at the assessment tools, because each registered person needs to be assessed, and we need assessors. So we would develop assessment tools, and we would train the first batch of assessors in relation to the scope of services and the criteria, etc. We need to also develop the recognition of prior learning processes, because there are people out there which may not meet the qualification standards, which have obviously been operating in the industry for quite some time, and we will develop recognition of prior learning processes. Then I think not the last one, but another one which is included is to conduct roadshows, and the objective of the roadshows is to communicate the registration requirements to the relevant stakeholders.
Now, this sounds like quite an involved process, and I'm sure people who are listening are going to be asking, why another registration? Why is this necessary?
Natasha, we began the discussion by you mentioning poor building standards and building collapses. And I think that is most certainly one of the main contributing factors. We have to look at, there is poor regulatory compliance by building contractors to building regulations. And there's a range of reasons given for this. There's lack of quality controls measures. There's poor education qualifications and insufficient work experiences on both sides of the spectrum for the building, the contractors and the building inspectors. And then there's inappropriate regulatory enforcement. And unfortunately, of course, we've always got to think about corruption and then the lack of experience in the enforcement of the regulations. So the building, if we look at the building inspector, what is required of a building inspector? The building inspector doesn't just need knowledge on the national building regulations, but they need to have knowledge and insight into other regulations, such as the construction health and safety regulations, because obviously building collapses could result in serious injuries. And then, of course, we have environmental regulations, which also need to be complied with. But the individual themselves as a building inspector, they need to actively engage with both project management and the public. So they need those communication skills. They need to abide by ethical standards, and obviously they need to know those ethical standards and what is required. And they need to be able to share their decisions arrived at during the inspections of the non-compliances which are evident. They must respect turnaround times, because obviously construction is heavily reliant on meeting programs. So the inspector needs to understand those turnaround times and respect those turnaround times without negatively influencing standards, obviously. And then they need to contribute meaningfully to dispute resolution. And at the end of the day, they need to provide an adequate report and account for their inspections. So you can see there's a lot more skills than just needing to know about the law. So the registration process is going to provide a foundation for professionalization. And what do we mean by that? We establish a standard scope of service, which will ensure that all stakeholders have a clear understanding of the expectations from both sides, the building inspectors, the consumer, and of course the contractor themselves. So the industry and public will also then have gratification, if I could put it that way, in the knowledge that the inspectors which are coming to inspect the buildings have gone through a process to ensure a level of professionalization is reached. The inspectors themselves will have clear guidelines on what is expected of them in the registration in the different categories.
Could you give us a basic outline of what the registration process entails? How complicated is this going to be?
Natasha, it must obviously not be too complicated without compromising standards. So we are going to base the registration process on the current construction health and safety registration process, which we know has had some issues.
I was going to say there were a few challenges that faced that process recently. Have these bugs been ironed out for this new system?
We cannot deny that there were challenges. The registration process started in 2014, and 5 years down the line, I believe there has been massive improvements made. There is a maturity being reached, and I would like to believe, and I can say that in 5 years we've learnt our lessons from CHS. I cannot say that there's no more problems. There will always be problems, but these we are now aware of, and they're being dealt with. So we come from a position of strength with the building inspectors, in that we've learnt our lessons from the construction health and safety registration process, and we can move ahead. And having learned from those lessons, we believe this process will run much smoother. So if I could run through the process, then that once the categories are approved and there's a linked criteria to the categories, the step one would be an online application. Everything will be done online. There will be no hard copy applications. Once you've registered and you have a profile, you submit a pack. Let's call it a pack, and in that pack you will provide proof of your qualifications. There might be project reports to display your knowledge in the specific category which you are registered. So once this pack is then electronically submitted and you have your profile, the SACPCMP admin staff then verify that the necessary documentation is in the pack, and they circulate that pack to assessors. The assessors then adjudicate according to what is in the pack in relation to the criteria or the category which is applied for. And this is according to the scope of services as well, obviously. If this is approved, the applicant then advances either to an examination or to an interview, and that depends on what category that they've applied for. So they then will go and write the exam or attend an interview, and if they are successful, then that applicant is then successfully registered. The other processes are reliant on the SACPCMP processes, and what am I talking about here is the appeal process, the disciplinary process, and all of those processes will comply with the SACPCMP standard practices. Persons who are currently operating in the industry and who might not meet the qualification standards which are set for different categories, the recognition of prior learning processes would be developed to ensure that there would be no exclusions as such. Nobody would be excluded. However, having said that, there will obviously be standards which must be met. Now, I must just reinforce that the roadshows which are planned will give a full explanation, introduction, background, and follow the process of registration. So I plead to the applicants that they attend these roadshows, that they can then actually see what it's all about and learn what the registration process is about and how to go through it.
Okay. We will now take a quick break and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Today we are recording from the SACPCMP offices in Midrand. Welcome back to Shapeshifter. We're here with Doug Michell from SACPCMP, who's speaking to us about building inspectors. Doug, we spoke about the roadshow that has been planned. Tell us a little bit more about that. Who should be there? Where is this going to take place? What are we looking at?
Natasha, at this stage, we haven't set locations, venues, but the idea would be to reach as many people as possible. And those people are people who are currently operating as building inspectors within the industry, people who plan on registering as building inspectors, or people who are planning on possibly studying towards becoming building inspectors. And so, again, I would appeal to these people, and most probably people in management too, building contractors too would not be averse to attending. But it is important because we plan on these roadshows will be very informative. Number one, the explanation will be there on why we believe that building inspectors should be registered, the background on it, the introduction, some feedback on the studies that were done. And then we will actually go through the registration process. Let's call it a dummy registration process. So the attendees can actually identify with the process and know exactly what documentation should be submitted and how that documentation should be submitted. So we will obviously visit all the main centers, and then depending on numbers, we would go to the I would hate to get myself into a corner and say smaller centers, but to areas where we identify where there are sufficient numbers that we would have a session in that area.
Okay. So, in summary, what does this registration process mean to the industry?
Natasha, this industry, we're looking to professionalize an otherwise unregulated occupation, an occupation which has had a lot of criticism. As you say, with the building collapses, there's a chain reaction. So by providing an avenue for the registration of building inspectors, we believe that it will provide a foundation to uplift the occupation or the vocation of building inspectors. It will provide a minimum entry level, and it will provide oversight criteria, which would play a critical role in delivering this product, this quality product, both the quality standards and safely, which is obviously very important too. But I think the best way that I could summarize this session is if I may quote directly from a paper that was presented in 2012 by Professor Smallwood, and then was later quoted in the position paper, which was published in 2016. And I read an extract from that paper. The primary motivation is the fact that regulation has the advantage of legitimizing the building inspector's occupational practice, strengthening its body of knowledge, improving its standards and ethical conduct, reducing the risks in its service provision, refining its certification process, and enhancing its reputation for credibility, efficiency, and authority, which I think is very important. And that is, of course, within the overall construction management family of professions and the wider built environment management professions in general. And I just want to repeat that sentence: enhancing the building inspector's reputation for credibility, efficiency, and authority.
Very important.
Which would then have positive spin-offs on the delivery of a quality, safe building or construction structure at the end of the day. So I would then just like to end off by saying thank you to the research team, which provided us with an excellent document to work from, and then of course the task team, which I believe are going to contribute to the successful application of this registration process. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I think we wait to see how things are going to roll out, and I think it sounds like there's quite a lot of preparation that's gone into this, and we look forward to positive results. Thank you very much. That was Shapeshifter, and we will see you again soon. Thank you.